Starting now. Okay, today is August 14th, 2023. My name is Gina Matos, and I'm with the Houston Asian American Archive interviewing Chae Nyan. Thank you so much again for taking time out of your busy schedule to participate in an interview with us.
No, it's my honor to join the interview.
Great, so let's get started. The first question is if you could tell us when and where were you born?
1991 in South Korea, in Seoul.
Great. So, what was your experience growing up in Seoul, in South Korea? How would you describe the household and neighborhood you grew up
hmm
in?
I'm actually born in Seoul, but pretty much right away we moved to a little southern city called Jeonju, where my parents are from.
Mhm.
So I spent probably like until my elementary school there, and then I moved to more south. It's like Chungcheongnam-do,
Mhm.
the coastal town. So I have most of my childhood memories in there, being around the coast, and like it's a pretty small city, so everyone knows everybody. Yeah, I think yeah, it was very warm and nice.
If you don't mind me asking, what were your parents' occupations?
Um, they had a business, like their own business. Yeah, mostly I don't know how to say, they sold like little jewelries or like stationaries, and also sometimes like clothing. It was like all in one. Mm, no, Target is like too big of an example, but they had a really tiny version of Target, like where they sell everything.
I see. Um, what were some of the values that your parents emphasized in your upbringing?
Values. I think most of Korean families are really thinking really important of like politeness, and you always put um somebody else who's around you first, then yourself. Yeah, but they of course make sure that I'm a happy person, and that I have everything that I need in order to make those like being polite and things possible.
Do you have any specific memories celebrating Korean holidays or traditions with your family?
Oh yes, until I got really serious into ballet, which is my middle school. I went to art school, Sana art school, and they're really strict. And since I started that school, I couldn't visit my grandparents' house more often. But until then, we always went to my grandparents' house, and we gather up there with my cousins and go to like Korean traditional house where our great grandparents lived, and we spent like every one of our families spent Thanksgiving Day there. Yeah, we share all the foods. You say you're hot Korean, you know all the foods that we celebrate for Thanksgiving Day. Yeah, it's pretty much family forward, like big family. Yeah, we
What was
sometimes dressed in Korean traditional wear when I was more younger. Yeah.
Did you have a favorite dish that your family used to make?
I loved the fresh rice cake. That I don't that traditional house we visited, which I'm kind of I have a vague memory whose house it was. One of our cousin or like great grandparents descend down. Um, they had the machine that you pour the rice into the machine, and the machine makes the rice cake, and then the fresh made rice cake goes right into the cold water, and I'll just wait around there to get the most fresh rice cake. That was my favorite. Usually we make soup with it, like you chop it up. I mean, you don't make that with fresh rice cake, but yeah, I think anything with rice cake, I loved it.
Yeah, me too. I can totally
Yeah.
relate. Did your family practice a religion?
No, my mom's side of family, actually both side of family, my grandparents all had a Christian, no, actually Catholic, but my parents not really. So naturally, I don't. I'm
Do you remember the first memory of you becoming interested in dance or specifically ballet?
Oh yes, it was on the TV. They were playing some, I don't even remember, probably Russian company, Sleeping Beauty. And in Sleeping Beauty's prologue, there's lots of fairies dressed in tutus, and they have their each own colors. So it was so colorful and in a tutu. And I thought it was the most prettiest thing ever I've seen. So I told my parents I want to do that. But at the time, we were living in the coastal town and where there are not much professional dance studios. But there was some, but I was too young to join. So I had to wait for a year. But my parents said, oh, she's gonna forget about it. But I don't know, maybe they didn't want me to dance. I mean, they didn't clearly didn't show it to me. But then they told me I was like begging to join the that studio for a year straight. In that I was 7 in Korean age, so probably here like 6 or yeah.
That's so sweet. So along that line, you kind of mentioned this already. But did your parents ever push you to pursue particular fields of study? And what were their views on artistic career paths?
Um, my parents, as long as I remember, they never pushed anything to me. Like they never say like, oh, you have to study or you have to homework from this hour to that hour. That's the only way you can get out and play with your friends. Never, nothing like that. And I remember all of my friends, they had to go to like after school schools. What do you call in English? They they had to go like piano school or they had to go painting school after just normal school hours. It was so normal, but my parents would never ask me to go or because I always hear my friends complaining, like, I don't want to go to that. I want to just go play, but I have to always complain. I'm always in the middle of like playing group because I always play. So I think that made me wonder like, mom or father, why don't you guys ask me to like study or like go join the piano school or painting school? Is it because you didn't say you wanted? And then as soon as I say I want something, like I want to learn, I think for them, it's really important that you have the drive is within myself to start anything. I'm really appreciative of them that they um brought that drive from within me, not like pushing it. So since I found something I wanted to do in early age, that um that desire never went away. Like still to this day, like I'm doing this because I want it so much. Yeah.
That's really great that they were so supportive. Um,
Mm.
so moving more now into education, um,
Mhm.
what was the Korean education system like? Such as what were like the dynamics between teachers and students, or even like between students? Because
Mm.
I know that there are probably differences from the US education system. So yeah, your thoughts on that?
Very different because I'm still a 90s kid. I mean, very early 90s. And especially I grew up the early education, my elementary school was in not in the center of Seoul, so less progressive, I guess. So it was very strict. Like the um I don't know proper way to say this, but sometimes like if we didn't do homework or something, but um then my teachers will bring like long ruler and we have to present our palms forward and then they will hit us because we didn't do what we asked to do. So yeah, unlike my family, it was really strict in the school. So I guess my parents didn't really push for the discipline, but I learned to be disciplined by not so ideal way, but from the school.
Do you know if today, I know that it probably differs from region to region, but do you know if
Mm.
physical discipline is still involved when it comes to schooling in Korea?
I don't think so. That's completely banned since I'm not quite sure, but I heard that it's not a thing anymore. Yeah. But that questions me, is it really, really like none? I'm pretty sure it's still like some of it exists because those teachers now is probably from our generation or like little more older, so they have experienced how that works. So I assume it'd be hard to just like cut it straight unless there's like law or something, which I'm pretty sure there's some by now.
For sure. I mean, it seems like attitudes are changing surrounding that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, so being Korean myself, like to my knowledge, like with a lot of families or households or just in general, there's a high competitiveness, to put it one way, surrounding academics in Korea. And
Yeah.
so I wanted to ask, like, what are some of Korea's attitudes surrounding the performing arts? Is there that
Hmm.
same level of competitiveness in the arts as there is in academics?
Yes, that's something uncomfortable truth that in my eyes, arts, especially the fine arts and dance, and those are not super natural in our traditional forms. Yes, we do, but it's especially I'm speaking as a ballet dancer, like especially ballet isn't from our culture, like it's brought from outside. So um to achieve that, I don't know, it is viewed as more like sports. especially when I was younger. Like we will go to compete more than actually perform. Like my early dance memories, it's more of competition than performance. Yeah.
Yeah, so I saw in your resume that like from an
Mm-hmm.
early age you were participating in dance
Mm-hmm.
competitions. So along that
Mm-hmm.
line, did participating in these competitions like affect your academic schedule? Or how did you like time manage that? And do you have any
Mm-hmm.
specific memories from any of these competitions?
Oh, yes. I remember I already participated in the competitions in elementary school. So I have a memory that I put in the request that I'm participating in a competition on behalf of my school. So I will take my school's name. So they dismissed me from like some classes because I have to go practice or participate in the competition. But then they were really welcoming because I will come back with um, prize and things with our school names on it. So they were pretty open about that as long as I remember. And also, the more serious competitions happened during my middle school and high school, which it was already in the school program because I went to the art school. They had a plan to, on behalf of my school, like participate in like certain competitions, which you could only do that if you, that's so funny. You you get the graded mm, by like if your school students the class is like 40 people and you get graded like your first place to 40 place. So and you can only participate in the competitions like from like one to if you are placed 1 to 5 or something. If you're 5 to 40 something, you wouldn't get a chance to participate in. Yeah. So that was quite uncomfortable, and that nature actually brings out the competitiveness rather than like really practicing art. Like now I'm in the professional field, it is still competitive, but the more emphasis on like creating, like it's nothing like go compete and get the gold medal, you know. Actually, I had a hard time switching my mind. Like I learned a lot after school because my focus when I was in the school was to get gold medal or and if I don't get gold medal, if I get bronze, like I get really depressed. And now I'm thinking like that's still amazing. And during you asked me if I have a specific memory of certain competition is my first international competition was happened in Switzerland. It's really renowned competition called Prix de Lausanne, and that's um, like people from all over the world come to Switzerland, and that special thing about the competition and the thing I really liked about, and that made me compete twice, like back to back. Like it was 2018 and then no 2017 and 18. I participated 2 times because it was more like a um, summer school or winter uh, school. Like we don't just go compete our what we have already practiced. They had a program that we can learn from the teachers all over the world, and we will take classes from them. Yeah, that was a really wonderful um, experience of a competition because it didn't really feel like competing. It felt like I'm learning from the people from all over the world and meeting the people, like meeting like dancers all over the world and be friend with them. Yeah, that was the special memory about competition.
So was there a lot of competitiveness between like students, like amongst yourselves, or was there kind of an understanding that the competitive nature was kind of being put on you by your teachers or mentors? Um,
I think, hmm, I think because I don't know, we try to hide that the competitiveness as much as possible because we all know that like we have to be friends and we have to be nice to each other to learn to learn as much as possible because like if the competitiveness is showed out loud and we try to cut people out of our school life or whatever, I think we knew that's not the most helpful thing. So we're very competitive, but we tried as hard as possible to hide that competitiveness. Like, but it was competitive.
were there any teachers or mentors that left a lasting impact on you during your early training years?
Yes, a lot of them actually. I think I'm pretty lucky to have all the teachers I have met. They're really passionate. One of the teachers from Russia, Mariinsky Ballet, I don't know, I think she really taught me a very important part of my dancing that I differentiate my dancing to others. Like those little elements I could have soaked up from the teacher because I was very young and like blank canvas. And she knew that, and she knew the importance of the part of dancing is very important than more like competitiveness of dancing, which is like a turn and jumping. She was more emphasized in like the expression of dancing. So yeah, her and the one other teacher, she's from China. She taught us the character dancing, which is a very important element to be um to be great dancer, not just the classic ballet, but the character dancing is always in classic ballet. So it's more like a seasoning in the food. So yeah, I still really appreciate and love the teacher who taught me that for actually for 9 years. The my school teachers all knew that's a really important part of ballet. So how important it was, they put the character dance program all year long, from middle school 3 years, high school 3 years, and then when I went to university, another 4 years. I'm I only did 3 years, so yeah.
Yeah, so you attended Sonhwa Arts High
Hmm.
School, like a private preparatory school, and then you attended the Korean National University of Arts.
Yes.
Um, was there a difference in the environment between the two, between high school and university?
It's, it's not so much different than I expected. In my head, I felt like going to university is more like a professional in entering a professional world, but it was more and less stretch. of the education I had, high school. But it of course prepared me to join the professional ballet world. But when I came to US, it's really different. In US, the ballet dancers join professional companies right after high school or um, before high school. So they start really early. So when I joined the company, Houston Ballet, this is my first company, and I was already so much older than people who are starting with me. Yeah.
Yeah, we will definitely get into your audition process and
Hmm.
joining the Houston Ballet
Hmm.
further down the line. But before we get into your career and the Houston Ballet, I had a few questions about your immigration experience.
Hmm.
So you moved to the US in 2013, so you were around the age of 22. Um,
Hmm.
what I guess, prompted you to move to the US specifically? And
Hmm.
can you provide some insights into your immigration experience?
Mm. I guess it's combined. You see, you're gonna ask me about like audition process, but I actually never auditioned because what like we talked about, I had my last competition. I believe it was my beginning of third year of university, and I participated in a competition which took place in New York. And Stanton Welch, who is artistic director of Houston Ballet, was one of the jury. And after the competition, he gave me the contract to join the Houston Ballet. So I didn't have to audition. I was lucky to compete and then get the um I guess in university the reason we go do international competition is to get in the company. Our professors, they told us it's the most natural way to get in the company than participate in like large uh, group audition and stuff. That, that's how I got in to US. And it was really quick. And Stanton wanted me to join like right away. So it usually the season starts from the summer, but the competition was in the summer and he wanted me to join as soon as possible. So I didn't graduate my university and I just came to um, Houston right away in end of September or October. Yeah. So it was very quick. All the decisions I made. Like, it was such a big decision to leave home that I never left within like 3 months. Not even 3 months.
Yeah, I'm sure. And so, what were your parents' views on you leaving Korea? I mean, so quickly and coming to the US. And how did you keep in touch with your family if you did during this time?
It was really quick because I don't think I think my parents knew because I communicate to them that I want to dance overseas. So they vaguely knew that's the idea and that's the next step of my ballet career, but they certainly didn't expect that it's going to happen right then. So, but as I said, my parents are all about supporting. Like if I wanted, like nothing entered the conversation. Like the only matter is if I want it. And I say, yeah, of course, I want it. I think it's gonna be fun. I didn't have any fear to go out as I'm an only child. But I don't know, those international competitions I participated in my high school year, early university years, uh, was really fun. And that made me think like, I think I'm gonna do great like overseas. And it's so much thing to see. And so I was more than willing to drop everything and go.
Did you experience any culture shock when you arrived? And if so, do you recall any specific moments? Was the US everything you expected?
Oh, yes, of course. There was a culture shock, and which everything else is, I have the understanding that we are very different country. And from like movies and things, I had a sense like how different it would be. But the most difficult part of the shock was actually in the studio, which I had thought it's not going to be so different because we practice same ballet and we dance same things. So how could it be so much different? But it was very different about the how I approach the the daily life in the studio. Especially like you asked me, the high school, middle school, high school, and university felt different. And I said like not so much, right? Like I thought it'd be more professional, it'll feel more professional than the school. University would feel more professional than school, but it wasn't much because I guess it was a cultural thing. Like if we have a teacher and professors in front of them were told to respect, and we always put ourselves under. But the professional world I got in here was very different. But I don't think I was prepared to um, see that in. I don't know. I thought somebody's in front of the room. In my head, like immediately, the person is the teacher and I'm the student. And I thought that behavior is okay and more like a charming behavior that somebody uh, knows more than me is teaching something that I become student. But the shockingly, when I had a first or second meetings with my artistic director, like he asked me to not to be too much of a student, like you're professional. That was a bit of a culture shock to me that here in the professional world or that's America, that you have to really present yourself. You're not waiting for other person to like present you to them. Like that was different for me because I always like I went to competition with my uh, teachers, so teachers will present me to anything I needed to be presented. Like even when I got a contract from Stanton in the competition, my teacher will bring me to him, and my teacher will introduce to him like, oh, Taeyeon, like, he would like to give you a contract. Like she will do everything. Because I didn't really speak English then. Yes, I understand that, but you know that nature of I don't know. I was still a student in the university, so I wasn't like super prepared to be like, as an individual, I guess. Yeah.
For sure, that's a huge shift, and I'm sure that impacted the way that you approached your craft or your art after.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Along that line, did you mentioned the difficulty of understanding English. So, did you experience like a language barrier when you came here, or did you learn English prior to coming to America?
Um, in Korea, we always had English classes from elementary school. We always have English class time in middle school, high school, but it's very different. Those school years, English classes were there to prepare for the test to get into the university. It's not preparing anything to converse, actually. So that was also difficult because I always held a good score in an English class. So I thought I'm pretty prepared. But then when I came to US, I couldn't use any of it because I learned to make perfect sentence with all the grammar and things right. But that actually was in the way of me to improve in English or speaking because I wouldn't speak unless everything's perfect in my head. So that was really hard to get in. And of course, it was a problem early years with Houston Ballet because they would like to communicate with me and um, they wouldn't slow it down because there's foreigner in the room, you know? They expect me to understand like everyone else in the room. So yeah, that was pretty challenging.
For sure. Did you face any discrimination upon arriving in the US, specifically in Texas? Yeah.
Um, I don't really recall other than it's the same. I wouldn't say it's a discrimination because my English wasn't sufficient enough to converse. So when I had to deal with the problems on the phone, the people wouldn't be so patient with me because it's their daily job. Like they don't want to get it done, but like it takes time for me to like get the words out, even though how much I prepared before. Like, those were some hard points, but I don't recall like getting a discrimination, experiencing discrimination, really. Yeah. Mhm.
Were you able to find a solid Korean community when you arrived in Houston, or was that important for you to find?
I not really because it's funny from my friends who already went to America before early on, or they said they lived in LA, but they came back and they still cannot speak English because they were in the Koreatown, the massive Koreatown. They didn't have to speak English. They can just hang with other Koreans in the city. I think I had a fear about that. Like if I go seek for Korean people and be comfortable with them, like I wouldn't go out as much with my colleagues and like American colleagues or who speaks English. So I think I try not to, especially that I do not have religion. Like if I had to go to church, I probably would have seeked for the Korean church and stuff. But yeah, so
Were there any influential people who helped you during your early journey within the US as a new immigrant?
oh yes. Um, my friend of my father who knew someone in the Korean consulate, he worked there, so he helped me a lot, like getting car or getting like situated, like where apartment, which area that's I'm not familiar with. I would think anything close to Houston Ballet would be good, but he actually said like you have to have a car and like which area is better to live than certain other areas. It might seem to be good. So it was great help.
Yeah, for sure. So now we're gonna start moving into your career. So the Houston Ballet is a very prestigious company here, in the US. So what does an average day look like at the Houston Ballet? Are there times in the season when things feel more hectic?
Yes. I think it's um also privilege for huge ballet dancers that we have such different repertoires in a year. Like we don't repeat things so much. So it's for us, it's always learning new things. So whenever we start, like after, for example, the summer break was 5 weeks break. So you would think when the day one, when you start, we will slowly get into it. Especially ballet is really physically demanding. So, but no, it's expected that you meet the physical demand beforehand, before we start, so we can start right on because we have so many things to learn. So it is very hectic all year long, but yeah, it's very um busy the first couple weeks because also we try to maximize our summer break, and then when we start working we have to prepare for our physical strength and things, so all the things are all together at once.
Yeah, that sounds crazy. I don't know how you guys do it. So you've performed with the Houston Ballet as a Corps de Ballet member since 2013. However, I saw on your resume that from 2017 to 2018, you briefly danced with the National Ballet of Canada, like for a
Mhm,
year. So
mhm.
what influenced you to dance with a new company at that time?
That was my fifth year or sixth year in the company, and I don't know, I guess I thought a change is not a bad thing. And at the time, I was at 25 or something, so it sounded really good time to experience something new if I wanted ever. So actually, that wasn't super planned. It was at the time it was a lot of moving in the company. Like many dancers wanted to try something else. So I guess I got influenced by my friends. Like, oh, they're trying they're trying that. So I wasn't really prepared to go somewhere else, but I was like, okay, like if I'm gonna regret if I didn't try anything, so I'll just give it a chance, give it a shot. So I sent my resume to one company, which is National Canada, and then they took it. I didn't really expect that. So I was like, okay, like if if I feel like I'm not like strong, I don't have a strong opinion about like whether I should move or not, let the world decide. So I just sent my resume and they took it. So they asked me to come audition. So I went to audition and they gave me a contract. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm trying this. Yeah, that's how I went.
And so what influenced you to come back to the Houston Ballet?
It's what we just talked about, how Houston Ballet has diverse repertoire. that we do always different things, which means to me we learn always something new. That was important to me, especially my mid 20s. Natural Canada, wonderful company. I learned a lot. Like it's very different. The company is more, I wouldn't say more classical, but uh um how do I put in? They their repertoire comes back regularly, which means that in a good side always have time to perfect it, you know? But I guess my 20s eyes coming from Houston Ballet, who we really cover everything, and maybe in my thoughts, like um my age at the time, like 20, mid 20, I wanted more challenge than um going deep and like perfecting things. Maybe my young thoughts, it sounded more boring than like learning new things every day, you know? So yeah.
So you came back around that time and then you were promoted as a demi soloist in
Mm-hmm.
2021. So
Mm-hmm.
how did you feel about your promotion and what are your general insights on the ballet ranking system?
Um, I that was during COVID time, so I got promoted on Zoom. So that was that was interesting. And I feel like that was um well deserved promotion for me because I've been in the company for a long time doing um not just core ballet roles, but also I performed a lot of soloist roles. Actually, that um pushed me to try other companies because at the time I was thinking like I think I deserve a promotion, but it wouldn't come to me. So that made me not so attached with the company at the time. So that's why I was okay to try something else. Because yeah, so the company ranking, what I think about that is in Houston Ballet, I think it means that if you get promoted to a certain rank, you're dismissed from certain roles. It's not necessarily that you're going to perform only that role, but um, what do you say? I don't know. It's a kind of sensitive part. Um, if you get to promoted to soloist, you no longer have to dance like core roles except some parts. It's not officially put in anywhere. So I cannot say that's 100% correct what I'm saying, but it is the norm. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems more like as you go higher in ranking, you're given priority for certain
Hmm.
roles or even lead
Yes.
roles. Would that be correct?
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and you brought up COVID in your answer. And so I was in Houston during
Hmm.
COVID, and from my memory, Hurricane Harvey and
Hmm.
the COVID pandemic had significant impacts on the Houston Ballet. I understand that you guys were displaced for a while,
Hmm.
especially during Hurricane Harvey. So what were your experiences during those times, and did those events have permanent impacts on the company?
Hmm. I was in Canada when the Hurricane Harvey hit. I was not in Houston. I was in Canada watching the Houston fully underwater, and it was so scary. Yeah, and my colleagues, they're performing, they lost home, the Wortham Theater was in the underwater, so they were performing elsewhere. Like, I feel like I was away, but I feel like I had experience that year because I was watching it so closely because it's nothing that I have experienced past 5, 6 years there. And then I came back and 2019 we just finished performing Sleeping Beauty, I think, and then the COVID like stay home order, and just like many of us, we thought it's gonna be just a little bit, so it was fine, but then we don't know how long it'll be. So I think it was challenging that I don't know, I always thought it's gonna be over sooner than how it had been. But yeah, no, but Houston Ballet during that time, um, amazingly that we were still working on Zoom and still creating things through Zoom. So now that we're past that era, I can say that I don't know, it wasn't just um devastation. I know it's for other people who had a sickness, illness, but as a company of Houston Ballet and as a dancer of Houston Ballet, um, we tried so many different things, so many different types of dancing, so many different formats of dancing. Like I'm not the one to uh who'd be first line to create and choreograph dance, but most all of us had to at the time. So there was another challenge that we accomplished. Yeah.
So going kind of in a different direction, what style of artistic direction or choreography do you work best with? Do you have any favorite dancers or choreographers?
Mm, I do, I don't know. Favorite. I guess mm, I'm the most fluent in classic work, but I do like every genre of dance. Like I do love contemporary dance. I wish I can be better at that, but I really do love dancing contemporary work and um what else? Neoclassic work. Our director, choreographer who does that a lot. So my favorite choreographer. Um, I don't have like the one, but I really love watching and dancing Jerem Robbins. And something this is new to me. I didn't think that I'm gonna like dancing George Balanchine's dance be- because my training is like Russian ballet training, and it's pretty different. Russian ballet training and the American ballet training is like really different lines and how to accentuate your movements. So I guess I had to put on like a wall, like, oh, maybe this is gonna be going well with me. But actually, like it's really fun to learn other style of dancing. So it really grew on me, and it's really fun expressing freely, which to me the American ballet techniques has. So yeah.
Yeah, so having been a dancer myself,
Mhm.
to my knowledge, like dance and specifically ballet is extremely
Mhm.
regimented. Like, it's
Oh
just
yeah.
not for everybody. So, can you share any insights into the craft of ballet specifically? Like, what has ballet taught you? Oh, and or has it had any consequences for you?
Mhm. Oh yes. The how to be disciplined, because you have to be to um make your body like malleable and things, and the daily routines. And I guess I learned that very early on, just being in the ballet studio. Like we had to be there, like clean, hair done, and always the like leotard and tights and the shoes. Always, we cannot just go like in the shirt and then do dance. So I learned that discipline to be disciplined very young age, and the consequences. Hmm. Sometimes, now I'm much better at it, but during my probably high school or university, I I had a fear of resting. I I didn't give myself a day off. Even sometimes, even the New Year's Day, I would be in the studio, not because I had to practice something, but out of fear. If I don't dance one day, it's gonna come at me sometime. So, I don't know. I couldn't balance that for a long time. But as you know, like being professional and learning and watching how other people cope with that. So now I'm really good at resting.
Along the same lines, have you faced artistic burnout? I know that you said that the Houston Ballet has a diversity of repertoire, but
Hmm.
it has its annual shows or it cycles through like certain
Hmm.
classics. So,
Yeah.
how do you maintain creativity or freshness in the work
Mm.
when you are performing it um repeatedly?
Um, yes, we do have something coming back every year, Nutcracker. I've been doing this for I don't know how many years, every winter, except the COVID years. That felt really weird, not listening Nutcracker music all day long. And how to maintain that? Because I certainly do same, almost similar roles every year. So that's a always challenging thing to make it fresh. So I guess we try to focus on like the different points of dancing. Like maybe this year I'll it, mainly like I make the rule, or I make the goal in my head. Like I'm gonna focus on this year. Or it can be really small things, but I think that's important to have that. So you feel like achievement a little bit, that helps to get through that. It could be like um yeah, burning out moment, but you will feel like a small achievement every time. Mhm.
What has been your favorite role?
Oh, in Nutcracker specifically, or like
Any role?
any role? Um, it's not a character, but it's a dance, George Balanchine's dance, Jewels, and I got to dance Emerald, and one of the solo in the Emerald is really, really fun to perform. It's there's not much um how do you say? It's not so much set choreography. It's more of an like essence of a choreography. So it starts with running across the stage from back to the front, from the corner to the front, which that feels amazing in a long tool. And especially when we performed at Miller Outdoor Theater, it's really fun outside the breeze coming through and you just run and I don't know, it feels really freeing. That's been my favorite to dance. Yeah.
I actually saw it at Miller Outdoor
I
Theater.
did.
Yeah, a
Oh,
few months back. It was so beautiful. I loved it. I'm pretty sure
oh,
probably saw you in it, but everyone,
yeah.
it was so great.
It's so fun.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so moving on to the next question. How has your identity as an Asian woman affected your career in dance, or if you feel like it has? Again, did you face any discrimination as an Asian woman in your field?
I guess when you asked me prior to this, um, if I faced discrimination when I first got in Houston, like in the city, I said no because I don't spend much time outside, so there's less chance to face that or feel that. Um, in studio, I cannot say there has not been there because, well, I wouldn't put it because to me the discrimination sounds strong word, and I do not want to put my people who I'm working with on a I don't know. But yes, I guess the name, like how to pronounce, or because Houston Ballet has Houston Ballet is such diverse company. We have so many dancers from all over the world. So um and so many Asian dancers, so many of them. So I guess sometimes even though I'm like almost 10 years in the company, sometimes my name pronounced wrong and or I get called by some other Asian girl's name. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I can call that as a discrimination, but I think our company is really appreciative of the diversity. So, yeah.
Yeah. And to my understanding, the Houston Ballet travels like internationally during the year,
Mhm.
perform in different places. So have you performed in Korea since joining the Houston Ballet? Um, and what are some of your insights in performing internationally?
You mean if I have a performed as a Houston Ballet dancer, like with Houston Ballet, or
Oh, it can just in the time that you've been with Houston Ballet. Yeah, it doesn't have to be necessarily
I
with
see.
ballet.
I s- no, unfortunately, we as a company we went to Japan last year, but we didn't quite get to the Korea. It's so close, but so as a company, no, I have never performed in Korea, but as an individual, I have performed a couple times. Not recently though. Yeah. And I don't know. I would like to one day, but early on I had that I would, um, you know, in Korea, I don't know, in my thoughts, it would be much better if I go back perform when I get to like principal or something, when I have a more better title, so I can make my parents proud or my teachers proud. So that kind of pressure I have, and I have refused to perform like a couple times because of that reason. Which now I think like, oh, that was so stupid of me. Like I should just take the chance. Like why would I feel that way? Like yeah, but that's me.
So when you're performing in other countries, um, like what is that experience like? Because there's jet lag and then you have such a quick turnaround time in which you have to perform. So do you have any
Yeah.
insights into that?
It was really challenging this time when we went to Japan because it was such a short trip. So we had a long flight from here to Japan. Um, and then we had that, we got in the afternoon or evening, and then we had that night free, but then the next day, like we had to get ourselves ready to rehearse and things, and which the program we brought was Swan Lake, one of the hardest ballet. So it was really hard. Jet lag hits so hard, and when you have to be awake and try to like put makeup on, like your eyes get so tired and your muscles feel different. My muscles like still in the Houston time, so my muscles like getting like ready for bed, like relaxing, like, and I had to like tap my muscles, like wake up to perform. And we had a double show 2 days, so it's like in the morning at night, which is very challenging to perform Swan Lake twice in a day, and having to flown like a day before. It's not really ideal, but everyone was so excited to be there. And as a like presenting Houston Ballet to Japan audience, so I think that was possible because we all were like, we want to do this good.
For sure, that sounds exciting, but exhausting at the same
Yeah.
time. So Um, kind of going in a different direction. What are your insights on reviews or dance critics? Do you believe in reading like reviews of your work?
Um, I guess a review is one person's opinion about the dance, which I think it can vary so much. But I I do read reviews, like just to see how um the ballet, especially if it's new ballet that we put on, I want to see how different it'll be from within and from outside as an audience. Oh, but I think because I don't know, I take it differently. I guess because I'm not a like usually not a main dancer, so my name wouldn't be mentioned as much. So that risk's low that I'm gonna get hurt from the review. So I'm not so hesitant to read reviews. I'm more focused on like how if it was story ballet it's put on, like how the storyline viewed from audience as opposed to how I can see inside. Like sometimes I can see crystal clear in the studio, but then the audience very get confused. So I don't know. That I think it's interesting to read the reviews.
For sure. I could see definitely how that would differ from person to person and depending on the
Mm,
role and the show and everything.
yeah. Hmm.
Um, so kind of coming to a conclusion to this section, I have a few more questions. What advice would you give someone pursuing dance or specifically ballet? And further, what makes someone a good dancer in your opinion?
Oh, makes me a good dancer. Hmm. Don't really know. To me, a good dancer, yes, of course, and has to have the willingness to always pursue the basics, the lines, and the dynamics of your physical abilities. But I feel like good dancer should and be able to then dance the in-betweens from the pose to other pose. But when I see the really good dancers, I see the in-betweens from that pose to other pose, which is very hard to see because usually these days more like you only see the photo of dance, which is the point of the dance, the peak of the dance. But to me, the difference it makes from really good dancer and still growing dancer is the how you can connect and dance the in between. Yeah. So, mhm.
Yeah, for sure. So in the future, what do you hope to see in the dance community in Houston or in general?
Mm, I don't know. I would like um, more people to come see the dance, like more approachable, not necessarily meaning that I don't think that we have to make like mm, the material of the dance approachable. I don't think that's necessary. Like meaning we don't have to make like Pokemon ballet to like um bring in like younger viewers or anything. But I don't know. I wish to be advertised more to people and just people come and see and feel like it doesn't have to be like you have to know the music, you have to know the whole storyline. It's like people go to the museums, like you can just view as who you are. You don't have to know everything about the painter or like how they paint and the materials of it. Like you just come and enjoy. So
What do you feel is your greatest career accomplishment thus far, and what goal do you hope to achieve in the future?
mm, the greatest achievement. Yes. Mm, I don't know, greatest achievement. I feel like just that I'm dancing here with Houston Ballet, and then I went out to see other world, and I feel greatest achievement when I dance, when Houston Ballet brings company to other cities or other country to perform and to show like how strong we are and like the how capable we are. I feel greatest achievement, not as an individual, but I don't know, as a just individual, I don't think much about that. Like I value more just daily basis, like what my achievement today or you know. So and my goal is like I said, the my favorite ballet to perform was the Emerald. Like my goal is to feel that more often on stage, to feel the freeing feeling and expressing that that spontaneous the joy on stage. I think that is really hard to capture and really hard to recreate, but you have to be just so present on the stage to feel that. I think that's my goal. I don't have like, oh, I have to dance this role or I have to be like certain rank of the company. Yeah, my goal is just to the feeling that freeing feeling on stage more often. I'm pretty sure that's really effective from the viewers to see the dancer dancing freely and expressing and to see that spontaneous um, art on stage.
Yeah, it's really impactful. And thank you for such a lovely answer. We're gonna be now moving into our second to last category. We're
Mhm.
gonna be talking more about your family and
Yeah.
personal life. So
Mhm.
my first question is, what is it like maintaining familial relationships overseas? I'm sure it can be challenging at times, but yeah,
Mhm.
what are your insights on that?
Yeah, our family, even though I'm an only child, maybe the fault is on me because we could do the Zoom like this with my family or like FaceTime, but our families not comfortable like FaceTiming, so we don't really do much of this. But we do text often and we share what we eat or where we go or what we're seeing things with text. So because the time difference, we can just send it and then we can reply and write thoughts about that like whenever we have time. Yeah. We don't have like set time to call and things. I I wish to get better at that more.
No, I get it. Sometimes FaceTiming and Zooming with family can be a little uncomfortable or strange. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I could get why.
Yeah.
Do you practice any Korean traditions or celebrate any Korean holidays on your own?
Um, yes, I do try to make all the like Korean uh traditional day like food or usually I really love cooking. I grown to love cooking during pandemic. Before pandemic, not so much, but after pandemic that we had to entertain ourselves in the house. So I found my lovely hobby, like cooking. I really like it. The creating, like Koreans don't really measure so much. It's just they say 손맛, they just put it. I love it. So like I would never remember the recipe if I make the one. I would never remember. But just I will make again, so I'll just be good at it. And yeah, I celebrate my Korean holidays making Korean food and um, not so much going to Korean restaurants.
What is your favorite dish to make?
Oh, it's like my soul food. It's tteokbokki. I really like it. Or I love making pancakes, kimchi pancakes, or like kimchi stir fry and with like steamed tofu and sometimes I put like pork in it and what else? So many things. I sometimes make like easier version of kimbap mm, or sundubu. I love making sundubu jjigae. Yeah.
That's making me so hungry. Um, so another question. This is if you're planning on raising a family in the future.
hmm
Um,
hmm
how important do you think it would be to educate your children on your Korean heritage when raising them?
Um, is it as in how important it would be? Like raising how I raised?
It can be that, or it can be if you find it important to keep Korean culture and tradition alive. Um,
Oh, yes, for sure. Um, um, yeah, I would think so because that's who I am. I don't think I can just completely ignore my heritage, my culture to my child. Because I very much enjoy it, my Korean heritage, my Korean culture, and like all the holidays I celebrate, or like um how I think a person mm, should greet person, or like how to behave in a public space. Like I feel like I'm gonna teach my kids like mostly Korean way.
do you participate in the Korean community in Houston? And if you have, what has been your experience?
No, not really. I haven't reached out to any like Korean community. I don't know, maybe also the Koreatown's a little further than where I live. And yeah, I'm not doing so good at that, like reaching out to Korean community in Houston. But I saw um Korean traditional like dance or music performing in the park. Yeah, but that just going to that is or like Korean food festivals. My colleagues love that more than me. Like they let me know there's a Korean food festival. They're like, "Yeah, are you going?" Yeah.
Yeah. So Korean popular culture has boomed within the last decade, internationally. So what are
Mhm.
your insight on the rising popularity of Korean popular culture, like across the world?
Yeah, it's so cool. And how young those people who are influencing the world, how young they are. Um, Also, but it's very different. The culture, the people are so different because when I was student and when I liked them a lot, like when I was in high school, middle school, when I follow them, and I think it changed a lot because I heard like it was so strict to raise those singers and the idol groups, like the harsh environment of making them, that kind of got me a little bit like pull myself back because that was too close to my upbringing, like how I um felt in the school sometimes, like too strict and like, but I believe the Korea has changed a lot and the people seem more freer than how I felt my generation of those Korean idols. So I don't know. It's fun. People love Korea, and my only hope is um I don't know how for the Koreans to view the obsession of the beauty, like the strict form of beauty. Like I I guess because Korea is I don't know if I can say this, like one race country, like mostly they're not so much of um diversity in there. Yes, in the Itaewon, there's so many foreigners, but still. So I don't know. Sometimes I feel like Koreans, I want us to learn that the beauty isn't defined by one example. And I sometimes try to refuse that the beauty only has to contain like the outlook, the outside, how that the pursuit of like big eyes and the high nose and like skinny body. Like I really hope for Korean pop culture to get out of that mold. But otherwise, their music, how that makes people joy, brings people joy, like I'm so happy.
Yeah, for sure. And so unfortunately, with the rising popularity of Korean popular culture, especially during the pandemic, there was an uptick in anti-Asian hate crimes.
Mm.
So if you feel comfortable discussing such a sensitive subject, do you have any insights into that time or yeah, what were you feeling?
Yeah, it was very scary that as a person like I don't really feel the discrimination around me like so close, but seeing a lot of it happening um through um my friends said like they had gotten attacked by a person on the subway and like that feels really close now. So I don't know how to prevent that, but yeah. Hmm, I don't know.
Yeah, definitely a very scary thing. And so the last question of this section before we get into our concluding questions, you touched on this a little bit, but what are your hopes for the future of Korean or Korean American or Asian American communities in the US? Um,
Mm, as in like how, I don't know, could you elaborate
like, do
that
you
more?
think that there are, it's kind of a vague question. Are there things that you wish that things could be improved on? You can talk on kind of the political activism or um, social sphere of the communities. Um,
Mm,
it's a very general question, but
yeah.
yeah, if you can provide any insights on that.
No, I guess I had said a little bit that I love that we are being focused um now with the K-pop culture and things. But like as I said, I wish this not only um focusing on the outside of beauty, I guess, but now I'm seeing more positive things about people because of K-pop. Like people try to look inside of Korea more, like how uh sometimes people get into art history and our like what's our traditions and things. So I don't know, I guess I would like us to have more pride in what who we are, what we have, and because to me, the pursuit of Koreans' pursuit of beauty is to be more like Western people, like to have more like bigger eyes, like higher nose, and like. But I wish we find the beauty within us, which other people think that we have so much to offer, like the pride of Hangul. Like I want us to use more Hangul. Like sometimes I get because I'm in America a long time, like whenever I go back to Korea, there's so many changes of I know it's because there's so many tourists now. We are accommodating them. So there's so many like English on the um outside of the store or anywhere. There's so many it changed to and even people using speaking, but I want us to protect or have a pride in like Korean Hangul, not try to um blend so much. I mean, that's a good thing. Like Koreans always would like to comfort other people, so we're very accommodating. But I wish we can mm, appreciate ourselves more.
Yeah, thank you for such a beautiful answer that answered the question perfectly.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, going into our final questions. Starting off kind of with a big one. In your words, what do you think the role of dance is in society?
All of dance. I think, you know, people always have to express themselves, and that's what we do. And you feel some sort of release. You see somebody else expressing on behalf of your like feelings. I think that's a big relief, and like getting the idea, or I think it's a different form of mm, many things. Like the it can be a release of anything you have in your life, or it can be an inspiration of anything you will do in your life.
How do you identify yourself ethnically? Would you say that you're Korean or Korean American?
I I don't know. I say Korean. I'm Korean living in America. Is it the Korean American? I don't know the um what what defines Korean American and Korean. Is it your parents immigrate here makes Korean American, or
Typically, yes, but at least in my opinion or my kind of philosophy on it, I think Korean or Korean American can be like there is not one definition for each.
Mhm.
We'll have different people who uh, immigrated here like in the last few years, yet they'll still identify as Korean American because
Mm,
living here in America as somebody from the outside is a different culture here. So
mm,
it really is kind of how you wish to define it. So uh,
right.
yeah, if so there is no one definition, at least in my
Mm,
opinion. Um,
mm.
but
I guess my friends in Korea definitely call me Korean American because I um think differently than them, or sometimes now there's a cultural difference between my friends and me. Like they think this is the normal, and then I say like, what is that? How is that normal? So they definitely call me Korean American. But I don't know. I feel like Korean still.
so when and where do you feel most at home? Is it when you go back to Korea or is it here? A mix of both?
Oh, that's a really interesting thing because in the early years in America, I would say um, I'm going home, meaning I'm going Korea. But now it feels if I say I'm going home, I mean here. So that's really interesting. I feel I guess by time, like I feel more at home here now than Korea.
And how do you wish to be remembered? I know that you said that you are very focused on the present moment, but how do you wish to be remembered as both a ballet dancer and as a person? Like, what do you wish to leave behind or be remembered for? Yeah.
I wish to be remembered. The dancer. I don't know. I never thought about that. Um, I guess I would like to be remembered as someone who lived life fully on stage and off stage. I guess that's what I'm pursuing. So
It's definitely a big question, so your answer is more than enough. That was my last question. So, is there anything that you would like to add to this interview that we have not covered yet?
no, I think we pretty much covered everything.
Great. Thank you so much for interviewing with me. And thank you for such insightful answers. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So nice to meet you.